Hello again, this is Dr. Mark Van Hoekstraat. Welcome to The Good Doctors. In today's video, this should be pretty fun. Going to talk about one of the most common diagnoses that people are labeled with, and that's a thyroid disorder, typically hypothyroidism, sluggish thyroid. I believe it is the #1 endocrine disorder that's diagnosed. So I do lots of consultations with mostly females when it comes to this, and the typical scenario is you sort of have some symptoms, got some blood work done, said, hey, we'll check your thyroid. It came back, yep, you need some medication. So they're put on some type of hormone replacement, typically a synthetic form, Synthroid, levothyroxine, something like that. Sometimes it's more natural, like Armour, but it's the same scenario, it's the same story over and over. A lot of times they're on these medications. They might try different ones or different dosages based on lab work, but they could be on for years, if not decades, and never really getting better. And in my opinion, thyroid conditions or disorders, one of the most poorly managed, mismanaged conditions in medicine, right next to diabetes. And so I'm going to explain to you and write out here kind of the whole thyroid cascade or the downstream actions of thyroid and why more needs to be investigated. And as we go along, I'll explain that to you. But I literally write this out for a lot of patients. Most of them have never learned this. They've never seen this. They get a bit frustrated because so much is missed with just a simple blood test. So just follow along. I'm just going to go through some basic physiology on how the thyroid works, what makes it work, and then what needs to happen after your thyroid produces what it's supposed to make. Your thyroid gland, it's a master endocrine gland. It is the master of metabolism in the body. Virtually every cell in your body has thyroid receptors. So this impacts you globally, systemically, on a cellular level. So it's really important that this is balanced and this is working right. So we're going to kind of cut a slice out here on just the thyroid mechanism. There's other things that can play a role that'll unfold, but hopefully this will be enlightening for you. So we're going to start at the top. A couple things happen in the brain first. Up top, we've got your hypothalamus. Your hypothalamus produces what's called thyroid-releasing hormone. That then goes to your pituitary, which then releases TSH. So TSH is the first thing that's checked in blood work. Medicine hangs its hat on this. This is the gold standard in medicine, is to check. They say we're going to check your thyroid. That's what they're looking at, is they're measuring your TSH. That stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. So this TSH then does just that. It stimulates your thyroid to get to work, to make its main hormones. Now the thyroid does make more than just a couple hormones. I think there's 5 or 6 total, I can't remember right now. But the main ones that we're looking at are, actually they change a little color here. We've got T4, and T3. So when your thyroid is stimulated to make its hormones, the body's doing that for a reason. Okay, it's going to try to increase the workload, increase metabolism, increase energy, things like that. So the majority of what your thyroid makes and produces is T4, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 to 95%. T4 is looked at and considered the inactive thyroid hormone. Okay, so T4 is not the thyroid hormone that makes things happen at the cell, okay? That would be T3. And your thyroid makes very little, so it might be up to 5% of T3. They're named those based on the number of iodine molecules they contain. So T4 has 4 iodines, T3 has 3. So what has to happen here is, in order for things to work right, T4 has to get converted to T3. So there needs to be this shift where T4 loses an iodine. And so this is where it really starts to get interesting and where the light bulbs can go off for people, because 80% of this conversion happens in your gut. Mostly your liver and intestines, and then even out at the periphery at the level of the cell. So we have this very important transaction that has to happen that is far removed from your brain and your thyroid. It all happens in the gut. Now, there's another thing that can happen here that a lot of people, we're starting to see this more frequently, and it's really under times of stress. It could be one incident, a major incident. It could be chronic stress. At times when your body really kind of wants to conserve energy and not really expend a lot of energy, instead of converting T4 over to T3, it'll convert this to what's called reverse T3. And basically what reverse T3 does, it doesn't allow regular T3 to attach to the receptors on the cells, because T3 needs to get into the cell and literally communicate with the nucleus, with your DNA. Reverse T3 then is T4 is shunted, or even if there's just excess T4, which, by the way, that's what most of the meds are. Your Synthroid, your levothyroxine, those are all synthetic T4 medications. And just a quick explanation, let's go back. Medicine looks at TSH. If they see that elevated, how they read it is that, okay, your brain's trying to get your thyroid to make more hormones. That's why your TSH is elevated, because it's just not working. So we're just going to bypass that, and we're just going to give you T4, because that's what your thyroid is going to make anyway. So they bypass the thyroid, give you T4. That still has to get converted over to T3. A lot of times if you have too much T4, it'll get shunted down here, turned into reverse T3. To get rid of that, that blocks T3 from working at the cell level. So we've got a whole lot more going on here than just looking at your TSH. The gut, really critical here. That's where that conversion takes place. And there's some key nutrients involved there, like selenium, that if you have a deficiency, you could see some issues there. So now we've made some T3, we've converted T4 into T3. T3 now, when it talks to the cell, and you've got your terrible handwriting, DNA. This now can talk to the cell, and when T3 talks to the cell, that's when the magic happens. You look good, you feel good, your hair's good, your skin's good, you sleep good, you poop good, your energy's good, everything's good. Okay, your metabolism's normal, everything's working right. But there's a lot of things here that need to happen properly for that to occur. Gut health, one of the main inhibitors of correcting a thyroid problem. Typically, it's not here, that's the problem. It's typically not even the production of this hormone, it's the conversion of T3, or in most cases, it's actually an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's. So if you've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, that's usually done via a blood test. There's a couple antibody tests they'll run, a TPO and a thyroglobulin antibody. And those, if they're elevated, would be indicative that your thyroid's under attack by your own immune system. Again, that brings us back to the gut. That's typically where all that starts. Pandora's box gets open via the gut and your immune system, a lot of times through intestinal permeability or leaky gut issues that can start to trigger the body attacking self-tissue. One of the key little nuggets there is that's one of the things gluten is famous for, not only creating and developing leaky gut issues in people, but gluten, the molecule, the protein, mimics and resembles thyroid gland tissue. It's almost identical. So if you develop a sensitivity to gluten or an intolerance to gluten, and you're consuming gluten, your immune system starts to tag gluten as a foreign protein. The immune system wages a war on gluten to get rid of it, eradicate it, because it's now enemy number one. You continue to eat gluten over time, your immune system can start to change its sites and start to tag the thyroid as gluten because of its resemblance, and now it can start attacking your thyroid based on your gluten intolerance, and so now you develop Hashimoto's. So regardless of testing, I usually recommend across the board if someone's got a thyroid issue or the symptoms of thyroid, I tell them you really need to cut out wheat and all forms of gluten as best you can make a huge difference. But the reason I'm going through this is a lot of times when people go in, they suspect maybe they have a thyroid problem or they're presenting symptoms of a thyroid problem, and they say, okay, we're going to check your thyroid. All they look at is that. Maybe they look at your T4. That's usually most I see on lab work. So a lot of times we'll end up ordering blood work, and our thyroid panel, at least if you've not had it fully looked at, it's good to do it at least once. You don't necessarily need to repeat everything all the time, but a full thyroid panel has 10 thyroid markers. So we're talking TSH, total T4, free T4, total T3, free T3, reverse T3, the antibodies, the 2 antibodies, and then there's a couple other T3 uptake and free thyroxine index. That's going to give you a much better picture of if there is something going on, where's the breakdown? And rarely, I believe there's only one true thyroid condition that will respond positively to the medications, especially long term, and that's typically if you've lost your thyroid. They've surgically removed it or irradiated it, or maybe you had some problem where they had to remove it, so you just can't physically make T4 anymore. That's a case where you need to supplement that in, but otherwise it's rare that the medication is going to fix anything beyond a little honeymoon period where you feel a little bit better, but then it's gone, okay? So, if you're interested in the testing, we can do that for you. We can, we work with people virtually. We can order the blood test for you and review the results with you. It's not an expensive test. Through our lab, I get really good prices, $157 for a full thyroid panel. If you're interested, just shoot us a message. We can work with you on that. Certainly you can look up those values and present those to your doctor to try to get them to do it. We've not been very successful. Most doctors, I don't think they know what to do with all the other markers. But there you go. There's how your thyroid works in a nutshell. Certainly there's other factors that come into play here, but if you're going to evaluate your thyroid, look at more than just TSH. You really need to look at all those different markers, and then if you need help interpreting it, we can help explain it to you and provide some solutions. So hopefully that's helpful. Leave a comment, like it, share it, all those good things. So this is Dr. Mark with The Good Doctors signing off. We'll see you next time.